Welcome to Raise Nation Radio, the podcast for nonprofit movers, shakers, and change makers. We are here to fuel your passion with a daily dose of fundraising inspiration while keeping the conversations and connections from the annual Raise Conference alive all year long. Tune in for fresh perspectives, bold strategies, and the hottest trends lighting up the nonprofit world. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned pro, buckle up. Each episode is packed with lively discussions, expert insights, and creative solutions to help you make an even bigger impact. Now get ready for another exciting episode. Please welcome your host from One Cause, Dawn Lego.
Welcome back to Raise Nation Radio. So glad that you're joining us again today. And, thank you from the bottom of my heart for being such a fan and making the show so popular. I mean, whether you've been with us from the very beginning or tuning in for the first time, we love connecting with you on this channel. And our promise to you is to bring very engaging, inspiring thought leaders. We're going to have insightful stories and just some conversations with pretty incredible guests. And one of which is Mr. Gabe Cooper from Virtuous, who's joining us today. He is certainly a friend to One Cause and I would say just about everybody in the nonprofit space. So let's get comfortable and chat with Gabe. Hi, Gabe. How are you? It's so good to connect with you again.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Don. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we love having you on our podcast. I think most of this community knows Gabe Cooper quite well, but there might be one or two that maybe need a refresher course. So do you want to just introduce yourself and share whatever you want to share about yourself personally, about Virtuous, and about everything that generosity means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Gabe, I'm in Gilbert, Arizona, and so it's beautiful weather this time of year. Love being in Arizona. Have 5 amazing kids and wife I've been married to 26 years, and so that's how I spend most of my time when I'm not working. But for work, I'm a founder and CEO of Virtuous Software, so we've been around about a decade now with a goal of helping nonprofits better connect with their donors in a more personal way at scale. We believe that in the world we live in, most of our inboxes and mobile feeds and even our mailbox are cluttered and it's hard to break through. And so as a result, it's getting harder and harder for nonprofits to sort of inspire their donors to give. And we want to help fix that problem. And so I'm just personally really passionate about generosity generally. Obviously love what our nonprofit customers are doing in the world and the impact they get to have. But for me, it's as much about shifting the heart of the donor. I think there's something magical that happens when we give our time and our talent and our money to someone else that makes us a little less selfish and a little bit more focused on our neighbor. And I love that part of the generosity story. It's really what inspired me to start Virtuous.
Yeah. I love that. What did you say? Shifting the heart of the donor. That's a good one. We're going to have to underscore that for sure in the show notes. I love that little phrase. But you know what? I'm going to hit you with the hard question if you don't mind. Because if I could hit anybody with a hard question in generosity, sure. It's you, Gabe, right? Yeah. What is it? We hear it all the time, connect better with your donors, right? What does that really mean? Can we break that down, or can you help us break that down? Because I think it's just in every content piece, no matter who's authoring it, we have to engage, inspire, connect better with our donors. But what does that really mean today?
Yeah, I think for most nonprofits, especially larger ones, you have sort of 2 chunks of donors. You have your major donors, and usually you have a major gift officer or something like that that's maintaining a personal relationship with those folks, right? And so I think as nonprofits, we've been pretty good at connecting with major donors. We grab coffee with them, we listen well and figure out what they care about in the world. And that sort of relationship is great. I think the problem is that everybody that doesn't give you $10,000 or more a year ends up being just a name in your database. So you have all these amazing people that are giving, $200, $500, $50 a month, and they're getting the exact same piece of sort of spray and pray, everybody gets the same thing communication, right? So everybody listening to this podcast, even if you work in a nonprofit, you're probably getting letters at your house from other nonprofits right now. And those nonprofits you use just a name in a database. And so the problem is for years, that's all we had available to us, right? Like it's just, you couldn't really do more than that. But in the world we live in today, none of our other brand experiences are that way. Like, I shop at REI. REI seems to know everything about me. Amazon knows everything about me. They're already suggesting me like gifts for the holiday season right now that are spot on, right? They seem to like understand who I am, send the right message at the right time based on what they know about me. So that's the world we live in right now. So your donors are surrounded by these very personalized connections from their favorite brand. They're surrounded by very personalized ad messages. Yet what they're getting from their favorite nonprofit feels kind of like institutional and impersonal. Like my heart was really wrapped around your cause. I gave to you for a very particular reason. You don't seem to know that reason or know who I am. And as a result, what we see in this country now is major giving continues to grow. So if you look at giving as a percentage of GDP, we're doing fine. We're kind of tracking along, some macroeconomic headwinds and stuff. But if you sort of double click on the underlying data, what you'll see is more and more major giving is taking up a greater percentage of the pie. And those everyday givers, the ones that are getting 1,000 ad messages from their favorite brands, they're like kind of opting out of giving, right? You're seeing everyday givers shrink year over year, which is, in my mind, just sort of horrible for giving and horrible for the state of nonprofits. And so that's what I mean. It's a long-winded answer, but that's what I mean by trying to build a more personal connection.
I wasn't being funny or facetious or sarcastic in that question. I really appreciate that perspective. So and smaller donors of 200, 500, I think it's important for us to recognize that they're parting with proportionately just as much money that hurts their pocketbook as maybe,
that's right,
a major donor does. If not, it hurts them more. So maybe they're being a little bit more careful. But when we think about the fact that they're shrinking away from giving, what are they doing instead? Is it nothing, and we just need to inspire them to connect with us? Or how do we fix the problem? Because you're right. This morning I made a purchase based on some algorithm that served me up some toy that at the exact right time, they must know I'm an early riser. They must know I get things done early in the morning. They must know what toys I'm after. And I made that purchase, and they made it easy for me. Like, I had about 10 minutes and I was able to make that purchase in 10 minutes, get what I want, get my coupon. It was easy, right? We want to replicate that in the generosity landscape. Isn't that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's a famous quote that we use a lot by a woman named Eglantine Jubbs that basically says, your donors aren't ungenerous, they're just distracted. That's kind of a summary of the quote. But we're just busy and distracted. And we're getting these personalized touch points from everywhere else except for our favorite cause. And it's just hard to break through. So yes, like the way you break through, in your case you gave with that toy, is why can't a nonprofit do the same thing? Why can't a nonprofit serve you up the right message at the right time on the channel that really matters to you in a way that moves your heart toward giving? Like, as nonprofits, why can't we send the right text message at the right time based on what we know about that donor, to resonate with them, to make them take the best next step with the organization? That's what our favorite brands are doing. And so, it's the way we do mail, it's in the way we do email and SMS, it's the way we do events, it's in the way even we're doing paid ads. But it even translates to like our major giver program. Like, do I know enough about my major donors? Do I know that my major donors are also volunteering? Can I learn from that data to craft a better gift ask to my major donors, right? Like, and so it really comes down, with the responsive fundraising, it really comes down to, how do you listen really well at scale to figure out who all of your donors are? Not just your major donors, but how do you figure out who people are? Because you can't build a relationship with somebody you don't know. And then once you've listened well and have a holistic picture of each person, how do you send the right message at the right time at scale? So the way we say that is connect. And so from a technology point of view, that means using things like automation to be able to automate the right touch points at the right time based on each person's behavior. But it can also mean just prompting somebody on your team to pick up the phone and call at the right time, right? And then suggest is the third thing we talk about, which is we don't want to suggest the next step that's inappropriate. So my son who's in college doesn't have two nickels to rub together. I don't want to ask him for $10,000, right? But what I do want to ask him for is to be an advocate for me on his campus. Like, can I know my donors well enough to suggest the right thing at the right time on the right channel? So that's what this idea of responsive fundraising is all about. And that's really Virtuous was built to solve that problem.
Yeah, so that's the Virtuous brand, being responsive and not just responding, but responding at the right time, in the right channel, in the way where your donor is listening to your donor, and then being able to predict the right next step, whatever that next step is. And I love that about the Virtuous brand and everything that you've built in responsive. If you know Virtuous, you know the word responsive really well, because they go hand in hand. And technology, you can build technology, but what is harder to build is the people behind the technology. So I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit, because, our listeners can go to virtuous.org, right, and get all the information that they want, or pick up the phone and talk to somebody at Virtuous about the software and how it works and how it's responsive. But there's something very special about Virtuous, the people, its culture, your culture of gratitude, that I think makes that software all the more successful. So I'm going to ask you to brag a little bit, because I know that that's all true. But do you want to talk about that a little bit, about the culture that you've created there at Virtuous?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, we talk a lot about software doesn't mean anything unless it comes along with a playbook and people. And by playbook, we mean, like, what are the things I should be doing to be successful? But the people is really, really important. So you want a team of people who's going to come alongside you as a nonprofit, shoulder to shoulder, and really care about the cause, know what they're doing, and help, right? So at Virtuous, it means a couple of things. It means we've hired a lot of former fundraisers. And so a lot of our team has sat in the seat of a fundraiser and struggled with the same things you struggle with. We care deeply about empathy. One of the ways we do that internally is, like, actually a couple of weeks ago, we had our big Virtuous Volunteer Day, where everybody at our company takes the day off and goes and volunteers with usually one of our nonprofits that we serve, right? And so we actually ask our team to volunteer at least 2 hours every month at a nonprofit. The reason we do that is because we love the idea of being generous. And so generosity is one of our values. But we also think it creates a ton of empathy for the people that we serve. Running a nonprofit's hard, and unless you really build that empathy, it's just tough. The other thing is, one of our values is be humble and enjoy the journey. And so we always say that nobody at Virtuous is a big deal. We don't hire people that are a big deal. And that sounds weird to some people, because they're like, it seems like there's some big deals that work at Virtuous. And yes, there's some
I know some of them.
Yeah. There are some very talented people that work at Virtuous, but nobody at Virtuous thinks they're a big deal, right? I think we've all had to work with people in the past that thought they were a big deal, and that's a pretty miserable experience. And so we try to cultivate this heart of humility and curiosity, knowing that there's always something more for us to learn. And so I think hopefully that comes through in the customers and the market as they interact with us. Those sort of values come through.
Yeah, I think it does, for sure. I think you're a leader in this space, not just for the software and the tools that you put into the hands of nonprofits, but just the connections to your brand and to your people. That's super, super special. And we certainly recognize it as one cause. And we're so glad that you've documented some of this in not one, but 2 books, right? So Mr. Gabe Cooper is also an author. We all know your responsive fundraising book, but you just launched, I think, at AFP Icon. Was it April of this year? I think that you launched book number 2. I haven't had the chance to read that one yet, but I will. I have a copy. I will get to it, hopefully over the holidays. But so tell us about what inspired book 1. What is that about? And then let's chat a little bit about book 2.
Yes. So book 1 really is responsive fundraising. It lays out everything I just talked about, like how do nonprofits build personal relationships with donors at scale. It goes through kind of the playbook and tactics for how you fix that problem. And so what we found after the first book is a lot of nonprofits said, yes, that sounds amazing. I want to do that. In fact, I've always wanted to do that. I just didn't know, I didn't have a name for it,
have a
but now I
playbook.
have a name for it and a playbook, but that's the thing I always wanted to do. And so that's great. But what we found was the thing that prevented nonprofits from doing it wasn't that they didn't understand it or didn't want to do it. It's just change is really hard. Like innovating and doing things different is really, really hard, right? And so the second book is really an attempt to use some best practice innovation tactics from leading nonprofits and people in the for-profit space to help show nonprofits how they can more easily change and adapt. Like if I want to start testing out some of this stuff, like what kind of culture do I need to create at my organization? How should I structure my teams? Like what are the best practices for innovations? How do we test new ideas and validate whether they're working? How do we do change management? It sort of goes through a set of 8 principles that outline as a nonprofit how you can drive innovation and change more easily. And so I think it's really the combination of my first and second book that sort of create a roadmap for how to get from here to there, if that makes sense.
More actionable. So the maybe responsive is why, and book 2 is kind of the how and the actionable insights.
Yeah.
I think that's what our space is really looking for. We get it. We know what we need to do. We kind of need to unwind some things that maybe we went down a wrong path for a few years. So we need to unwind and course correct, but I need that how to. So we're grateful to you that you put it together in a second book. What's the title of the second book?
The Responsive Nonprofit, 8 Principles that Drive Innovation and Impact.
Got it. And where do we find it? Is it Amazon? Any other bookseller?
Yeah, anywhere fine books are sold. And so actually, I really like the Audible version of this one, as weird as it sounds. It's like the guy who read it just did a fantastic job. So, I read some stuff in print, but for this one, for some reason, the Audible works out great.
Wow. Okay. Maybe I can do that while I'm walking and getting some exercise in. So I really have to look out for that and get that read for sure. So what inspired you? I mean, was it just the constant feedback from the community? Like, I get it, Gabe, but can you give me a little bit more on the how-to? Was that what drove the book?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just meeting with nonprofits that actually desperately wanted to improve donor retention. Our donor retention sucks. We want to get better. And we'd explain responsive fundraising. It's like, yes, that's it. Let's do it. And then I would say, what's keeping you from doing it? It's like, well, we've just done it a different way for the last 30 years, and doing it a new way is really, really hard, right? And you even present it to the board and they're like, yeah, I kind of get it. But what we find at many nonprofits is like things end up being like, hey, this is going to take like 2 years of change management. We got to budget differently.
And we don't have 2 years.
Yeah. And we have to find different agency partners. And and then all of a sudden it feels like you're boiling the ocean. It just feels like too much. It's like, gosh, we can't do this. We just got to go back to the way we've always done it. Right. And the way we've always done it is the death of every nonprofit. It's death by 1,000 cuts and slowly dying as the world around you changes. And I hate that. Right. And so the inspiration for this book was like, can we give nonprofits a set of tools to innovate and change faster? So that instead of trying to bite off everything at once and boil the ocean, are there a few practices that we can put in place? One of the chapters is on fun agile development, sort of the agile methodology, which just says, hey, do work in 2-week sprints with something you can test and prove in the next 2 weeks, and then look at data to see if it worked or didn't work, iterate, change, and then do it again. Do another 2-week sprint, right?
Rinse and repeat.
To rinse and repeat. These like small practices so you don't feel overwhelmed. You do a little bit at a time. One of the principles is on human-centered design, which is basically the idea of instead of having these like top-down decisions from your executive team, you're actually talking to your donors and the people that you serve, building empathy to figure out what they want and figuring out how you can deliver value more quickly based on what you're hearing from the folks you're serving, right? So just really easy principles to help you innovate and move faster as a nonprofit.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to Becky Endicott recently, and isn't she? I know. She's such a good friend and has such great perspective and empathy for sure. And she's like, it all starts with like just gratitude, you know, creating a culture of gratitude every day, all day. And that is something that you can do pretty quickly. And it's interesting when you express, and Eric Tamales is big on this too. I was just speaking with him on your team. When you start with that place in your heart of gratitude every day, all day, and you inspire your team to do the same, there's change. That's a change agent right there. So there are things that we can do. And I'm glad that you're spearheading and leading the charge and coaching us in that direction. So what's next? I have two hard questions for you. I'm just hitting you with all the hard questions today, Gabe. But what's next for Gabe Cooper? What's next for Virtuous? Where do you see Virtuous going? What do you think, coupled with that, what are the priorities that nonprofits should be thinking about as they're heading into the new year? Two tough questions, I know.
From a priority point of view, the good news is that giving is beginning to stabilize, right? It's been like the last 5 years have been very rocky and up and down, right? And so what we're seeing is giving is beginning to stabilize. And especially like now you have the distraction of the election out of the way. And so I think we can go into next year with, at least a hope that it's going to be back to something like normal, which is great. And so for nonprofits, I would say be brave and don't just sort of settle back into the status quo, because just because giving is stabilized doesn't mean that you're set up for scale. And so I would say going into 25, see if you can just pick, you can't do everything all at once, 1 to 3 big initiatives that are new where you really want to move the needle. And if there's sort of anything that I think is important right now, is probably like subscription giving, recurring giving, and re-engaging with those everyday donors, like the people that have given you $100 in the past. Can you turn them into a recurring giver? And can you build an army of everyday givers? I think many nonprofits, because they're becoming more dependent on major gifts, it's really hard to plan and forecast for the future, because your giving is really spiky. It's up and down. We're coming into the end of the year right now, and we're going to have so many nonprofits that get like 70% of their giving in the last 15 days of the year. That's just
or the
really
last 3 days.
Last 3 days, yeah. And so it's going into 25. How can I smooth that out by building an army of everyday givers that are giving monthly? So that's in terms of priorities, that's probably where I would focus my energy. I think in terms of what's next for Virtuous, we're really excited about leaning into AI going into 2025. The reason it's exciting for us is, as many of you have heard about this term, AI agents, or basically little sort of AI workers that help get the job done for you. If you talk to any nonprofit leader, it's a very stressful job. And it's often because there's too much work to do and not enough staff and time to do it, right? And so when I say, build a personal relationship with every donor, the normal reaction is, I don't even have time to do the things I'm doing today. Like, how and when am I going to do that? Well, for us, AI is a massive unlock for nonprofits, in that it can, one of our customers said it helps you sort of eliminate the menial tasks so you can focus on the meaningful task, right? So AI can help you do all of that sort of like everyday manual work that sucks up so much of your time so you can focus on the really important stuff. And so we're helping leverage AI to sort of do all of that background work. And then using AI to help you build more personal relationships. So if I can use AI to, for example, predict what a donor is likely going to do, and then write copy that really resonates with that donor. And so now I not only know what my donors want, but then I can respond to them quickly and save staff time in the process. That's super powerful. And so I think for nonprofits, there's like a massive opportunity for AI moving forward to sort of accelerate impact.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm very excited to see the shift that took place in 2024. I think in the beginning of the year, it was AI's gunning for my job. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be replaced by AI. And I think we're coming out of the year saying, wait, hold up. AI is my friend, right? It's my peer. It deserves a seat at the table. It's not if I use it, it's how I use it and how can I best use it so that I can do more meaningful work as opposed to being in the weeds. And it's a valuable tool. It's no different than a computer, pen, paper, all the tools that we use, every day. It's just, or Grammarly or spell check. Those are AI tools anyway.
That's right.
alarm clocks, they're, well, not alarm clocks, but you know what I mean. Alexa reminding me to do this, that, and the other thing during the day. We're using AI, and we've been using it for a very long time. There's no reason to be afraid of it. And I feel like that fear went away in 2024. Will Virtuous be folding AI more and more into its products?
Yeah. We have several features launching this year that are AI powered that will help our nonprofits do things like copy faster or find the data they need faster, right? And so rather than building some complex query, you can just type in, show me my best donors in Texas. AI should know what you mean by that and be able to return the results you want. So all things to sort of speed up your work and predict what your donors would want and then get them the right message at the right time. So it's all stuff we're hard at work. I just got off a meeting about this a few minutes ago. So I'm fired up about
announce here on Raise Nation Radio. I'll be happy to make that announcement for you.
I wish.
We'll wait for the press release. Well, I from the most inspiring man that I know in this space, I'm going to ask you to give some inspiration as we close out this episode of Raise Nation Radio. What inspiration do you have to just to all our hardworking nonprofit people out there that are wearing those many hats? What inspiration do you have for them to close us out?
Yeah, I mean, the world needs what you do. I hear so many nonprofits say it's really, really hard, and it is really, really hard. But I would say, be brave. There's nothing worth doing that's not hard. Nothing ever was accomplished in this world without the hard, right? And so don't be discouraged. I think you have, as a nonprofit leader, a massive opportunity in the midst of the change in the world over the last 5 years. You can sort of, get crushed by the wave. But the reality is many of the leaders I work with are finding ways to ride the wave, right? And so I think going into 25 is just be fearless, paddle hard, and ride the wave. I think there's an opportunity right now to massively increase generosity in this country and massively increase impact. And the world needs what you do. And so don't be discouraged. Don't get tired. Stick with it. Be brave.
Oh, gosh, I knew you were going to do something that just got us right at the heart. And of course, there's tools like Virtuous. And if it's okay with you, your LinkedIn profile, access to your books, virtuous.org, maybe some of your content, I'd love to wrap up and put in the show notes. So to our audience, easy access, just go to the show notes and you can connect very easily to Virtuous and to Gabe and to his books, right? All things that you'll want in your toolkit. Going into the new year for sure. So Gabe, thanks so much for being with us today. I love your inspiration. I knew I could ask you the hard questions, but we'll be watching Virtuous. I'll be looking out for those press releases based on this meeting you just have. Curious Minds wants to know what's coming up, but we'll keep a nice follow and watch. And please come back and join us. And hope you and your lovely family, lovely large family, have a beautiful holiday. We will see you a lot in the new year, I'm sure. But thank you for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Dawn, for having me. It's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's always fun with Gabe Cooper from Virtuous. Well, to our audience, thanks for tuning in. That was Gabe Cooper from Virtuous. All the information's in the show notes, so don't forget to check it out. And we'll see you on the next episode of Raise Nation Radio. Fearless Fundraisers, that's a wrap for today. A heartfelt thank you to our guests for sharing their stories, insights, and expertise. And to you, our fantastic audience, for everything you do to build brighter tomorrows in our communities. We hope today's content inspires you to amplify your mission and grow your impact. Don't forget to join us for new episodes every Thursday, wherever you listen to your podcasts, or catch us on YouTube and on demand at onecause.com. And before we go, we'd love your help in growing this podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow, and subscribe to Raise Nation Radio. Share it with a friend, and please leave us a review so we can continue delivering content that inspires and empowers. Raise Nation Radio is produced in partnership with One Cause, your go-to for digital fundraising solutions that connect nonprofits with their donors and drive results. Visit onecause.com or scan the QR code to schedule a one-to-one with their fundraising experts. and explore the latest tools and innovations to help you reach more and raise more. Plus, be sure to check out their extensive catalog of free resources to support your mission. All the links are in the show notes. Raise Nation Radio is inspired by the annual Raise Conference, presented by One Cause. We'd love to see you in person at the next Raise event in September. It's a 2-day experience featuring over 35 CFRE accredited sessions, dynamic speakers, and the latest innovations from our sponsor pavilion, and priceless networking opportunities. And while you're there, don't miss the Fearless Fundraiser Party. It's where memories are made and lifelong friendships are formed. Secure your spot today at onecause.com/raise. The link is also in the show notes. Until next time, thank you for tuning in, and as always, stay fearless.